Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jacqueline Dorsey of Lean Frontiers and I'll serve as your host today. I'm excited to bring to you today a short webinar called The Heart and Soul of Manufacturing, facilitated by Bill Waddell, Michele Nash-Hoff, and Jim Huntzinger. Jim, the president and founder of Lean Frontiers, will be serving as MC and asking questions presented by our listeners. Bill, who will be sharing his insights, is a Lean consultant, author, thinker, and teacher who has been defining and working at the leading edge of Lean for over 20 years. Michele, who will also be sharing her insights, is founder and president of Electrofab Sales, a sales industry agency specializing in helping manufacturers select the right processes for their products. Please note that this session will be recorded if you want to refer back to it later. So for now, let me turn things over to Jim.
All right, thank you, Jacqueline, and welcome everyone. And also thank you to Bill and Michele for being a part of this. We're certainly looking forward to the discussion and insights and conversation with them. So with that, Bill and Michele, I'm going to start off with, and actually the questions I'm going to go through, a good portion of the questions I'm going to go through are submitted by folks who are attending. So we'll try to get through as many questions as we can, although there's a lot of questions submitted and we only got 30 minutes, but we'll make as much progress as we go. So I'll start off with probably a pretty significant question to let you guys comment and discuss on. And this question is, what's the most important single thing to make American companies competitive globally?
Well, I'd be glad to answer that one, and really it's the same answer to a lot of the questions about what drives individual company performance, and the single biggest thing is good management. It requires leadership and management that understands the business holistically. A lot of the principles involved in Lean, and really understands the importance of speed, time to market for new products, time to market to meet customer demand, but a management that thinks well beyond standard costs and traditional financial statements, understands the business holistically, and aligns the whole business more around speed than cost accounting. I would think that if you have those things going for you, then you can succeed in any economy, but especially this one that's becoming more digital and more global. Even more of a premium on speed and getting beyond standard costing.
Well, to me, I believe it's becoming a lean company, and I don't mean just doing the tools and adopting the tools and principles on the shop floor. It's actually a whole conversion to being a lean company, incorporating everything from lean accounting, lean strategies, lean thinking, the whole package of lean. It has got to go from the shop floor to the whole upper level management and the transformation of the whole company.
Okay.
I think just to add on that a little bit, that probably a lot of people were expecting this, particularly in this political year, to talk about the importance of reducing the astronomical tax rates in the U.S., the regulatory burden, the problems finding skilled labor and so forth, and all of those are very real problems, but those are not barriers. There are lots of companies that succeed in spite of those things. Those are the things that will help. But good management succeeds in spite of those things, and poor management hides behind those as excuses for failure, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree, because of course I've got a whole book on what I think should be done to save American manufacturing, and I'm working on one about rebuilding manufacturing. So, because I've grown a lot since I wrote my first book in 2000, it came out in 2009. So, here we are, 8-9 years later, and we've got a lot of things. But I've had so many stories now of companies that are being able to compete successfully on the world marketplace because of becoming lean companies, even though we still have, the other problems that Bill just mentioned with high corporate tax rates, etc. So we can succeed and be competitive by being lean companies.
Yeah, and something else, Bill, is you when you first answered, and even with some of your comments, I would even, and I guess I don't want to try to set up the answer, although this might do a little bit, is even with a lot of what you said, even if a company was kind of regional, even within the United States or domestically, it really sounds like the same basic parameters. If you're a regional company, are really a lot of the same parameters make you competitive, even if you're a global company. Seems to be a lot of parallelism there.
Yeah, same principles apply, and you and I have had conversations that, a lot of the same fundamental principles that define success for big global companies are the same ones, down to the national company, the regional company, and down to the individual within the company. The values, the culture, the understanding of the business from end to end, not being too, using the accounting as a significant data point, but just a data point. All of those basic principles drive success at any size and any level.
Sure.
And even very small companies that only have, totally local customers, you have to be able to know if you're making a profit on a daily basis or at least a weekly basis, not at the end of the month. So I'm really become a real convert to the importance of lean accounting to be able to do that, and turning off your MRP system and going to Kanban. It's very critical to being able to be competitive and to know if you're actually making a profit.
Around that, what would you guys mention might be some of the best resources to begin learning about lean accounting?
Going to one of your seminars, but I mean there's several books. I know Bill's got books. I'm not as up to date on all the people writing about it, and here locally, I've read several books, and I know the head of the Lean Six Sigma Institute here, Luis Socanini, has a book, Lean Company, but unfortunately right now it's only in Spanish. I'm actually editing his English translation right now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think lean accounting is fairly well proliferated now. There are lots of good sources that you can learn the fundamentals, but I still believe that the starting point for most companies has got to be Brian Maskell and the Lean Accounting Summit. I think those two resources are where the foundation gets set. Read Brian's books, Practical Lean Accounting. Listen to what he has to say. Show up in San Antonio for the Lean Accounting Summit. And then there are lots of nuances and evolution and, individual company application and, lots that you can do from there, and there are lots of resources to do that. But I really think, Brian is still the go-to expert, and the Lean Accounting Summit is still the go-to forum, and everything builds from there.
Right, it is proliferating. I know the manufacturing extension programs, all over the country are now, starting to, incorporate that into their help with companies. Locally here in Southern California, we have the California Manufacturing Technology Consulting as our local statewide MEP starting next year. They're combining with Mannix in Northern California, so they have a focus on lean accounting now too.
Good. Well, that's some good insight, and hopefully people can utilize some of those resources. One thing I'll circle back around on as we kind of start off talking about how companies can get competitive globally, and maybe narrow that down. You both kind of touched on it a little bit, but we'll narrow into it a little bit more. How can a lean company, or how can lean in particular, maybe help companies compete, again within the global economy more effectively, and at developing their employees? So what's some comments or some insight on that aspect, developing your folks to be globally competitive?
Well, there's so many training programs now available, through the MEPs and through the here in California, the Centers for Competitive Applied Technology, the CAC centers. I've written some articles about the fact that you can, do the talent development and training through the SME Tooling U programs. We have, so much more available now than we did even 10 years ago all over the country as far as getting back to that career technical training and workforce development. We have like 45 programs here in the San Diego County region. We had a San Diego Workforce Partnership conference that I attended, and it was amazing to see what technical training is now available compared to even 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I would say, I think the two fundamental elements, and I always look at the world through a lean perspective, but, I think it starts with that fundamental cultural principle of respect for people, and that's management believing that people are worth training, worth investing money in, and once they're trained, worth empowering to go out and use that training. But you got to have the right culture in place. But I think from a technical, what do you do to train people? I think it's right there in TWI. You can't ignore the fact that when World War II broke out, they took hundreds of thousands of women that were housewives last week and became qualified welders and machinists next week. And that was all through the mechanics of TWI. So when we say we don't have enough qualified machinists, we sure didn't have enough qualified machinists and welders and electricians and technicians when World War II broke out, and Rosie the Riveter and all of the women took over the factories, but they were highly capable in very short order. So that's a road that's well plowed. It's right there in TWI. You can develop anybody to do anything pretty quickly if you've got willing management and a bright, enthusiastic worker.
Yeah, it's a good point. One thing on that, you mentioned kind of the cultural change. Do you guys have any, maybe give some comments on maybe what are some of the maybe targets, what should organizations or people in organizations target from a cultural perspective in order to get that cultural change you're looking for a lean environment?
Well, I think the biggest cultural change that we need to have is where managers and company owners realize that people are their greatest asset. Too many times when companies are buying another company, they're actually really buying, the product, because if they're buying a company and they incorporate that company into their current location, and very few people transfer, they've just really bought a product. They haven't bought a company. So when company owners realize that their people are their core competency, what that makes the culture of the company is the people that work for the company. And so you want to maximize your assets by training your people and viewing them as worthy of that talent development that's part of lean. So that to me was one of the most important things that I think Bill covered in his book. So the heart and soul of manufacturing. I mean, I was so impressed with that philosophy because, I've had the opportunity to be in some of those, CEO roundtables kind of thing where they were talking about the great equipment they had. That was their core competency. And I sat there and thought to myself, that's not your core competency, because I knew the people, and it was the people at the company that was their core competency.
Yeah.
Yeah, and culture, Jim, as often as it's repeated, and even to the point of becoming a cliche, it starts at the top. I've never seen, not just in a particular lean environment, but in any environment. Sure. I've never seen an organization of any kind that has had long-term success without the cultural leadership and commitment of the people at the top. If they're not connected and they're not committed and they're not driving the core values of the company, then nobody else can. I also think in terms of lean and that cultural commitment, that it's imperative that the accounting and financial folks either lead, follow, or get out of the way. But when everyone else is committed but the financial folks are not, and just set themselves up as a roadblock to transformation, then there's not much chance for success. But the people at the top need to be committed to the culture and particularly the financial leadership of the company.
Yes, I suppose, yeah, particularly, well, training, development of people or even training of people in the culture really go hand in hand, I suppose, to be successful for an organization.
That's absolutely true. I mean, if you don't have, if you don't really appreciate and sincerely appreciate the value of the people, then it's hard to imagine you're really going to make the commitment to training and developing those people. If people are viewed as headcount and a disposable asset, you know, how much money are you going to invest in them? And the answer is generally not much. And so if you understand they're here for the duration and they're the ones creating value for the company, then it's hard to imagine anything better to spend money on.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned a word there, Bill. I think is probably very much a very key word is the sincerity of it, and I think that really can show up very quickly on whether leadership is sincere or not in an organization.
Right, and picking up on what Bill said about the financial people, that is the key driver for, you know, also doing reshoring, because if you have your accounting department, finance set up on, you know, valuing everything as, you know, purchase price variance, the lowest price gets the order, and you aren't taking into consideration the hidden costs of doing business offshore, and you're still doing GAAP accounting, then you don't have even a way of actually fully analyzing the total cost, because it's in separate, shall we say, accounting buckets by departments. And so to me now the key for people realizing that they can be competitive, they can be profitable by having, you know, by reshoring and making things back in the United States, is to, you know, change that thinking from the traditional, you know, company thinking to becoming a lean company where you are incorporating, you know, everybody's working on a team and you're not broken down into these department silos, and you actually change everything and incorporate lean accounting so you can actually do a total cost of an ownership analysis to be able to see that you can reshore and be competitive.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just you got to listen to you guys' comments. Three things, at least, I trying to pull it together a little bit. Is Michele, you mentioned about reshoring and bringing things back back over here from a manufacturing perspective, and then the importance and tie-in of accounting with that. And to me, in doing that, thinking that through properly, also plays a role in, again, back to the word of sincerity of are you really sincere about your people and the value you put in them as most valuable assets in their development. I think all those three things play right hand in hand with each other.
They do, and this is more prevalent now in companies that are American-owned companies. They're small, privately owned companies. They're the ones that are actually adopting these philosophies and implementing them more as far as a whole total company than some of the multinational corporations. Because they no longer feel tied to the one country that they may have originally incorporated, and they don't have a loyalty anymore to any country. It's only to their, you know, profitability and the return on investment to their shareholders. So you don't have any real sincerity for valuing your people and training your people when you've lost that.
Yeah. Well, certainly the small and medium-sized privately held companies have a built-in structural advantage when it comes to lean, and really from the fact that they tend to be more tied to the community that they're in. The person who owns a place, you know, probably has a kid on the same Little League team as the guy who runs a machine on second shift. They know each other and they know the community, and they are more committed to the people. They also tend to be very cash-driven, and cash flow and cycle time of production are just two sides of the same coin. You know, cash flow is the great lean metric, and they also tend to have a longer-term view. They're not nearly as concerned about next quarter's results as they are about the value of what they're going to leave to the next generation. And so that long-term outlook, cash focus, and commitment to the community are something that are typically lacking in the big multinational publicly traded company, and it's awfully hard for those big companies to overcome those barriers to the kind of culture and management that lean success takes.
Yeah, that's actually. Oh, go ahead, Michele.
Well, that's why we need to get back to more of the philosophy of built to last. Are you, building a company that's going to last? Or are you just, building a company to make a quick profit in a future IPO? So that's, a company that has that mindset isn't going to be adopting, this kind of lean philosophy, because they're just only in it for the profit for the short term.
Sure.
Oh, and actually, two kinds of managers. Some of them flip companies the way people flip houses, and others are committed for generations. And regaining that long-term focus, I think, is one of the critical elements of rebuilding our manufacturing infrastructure.
Yeah, I think we'll take too long with that. The good analogy of flipping a house, if you're looking to do that for the company, I suppose is one thing, but if you're really looking to not just your employees but service your customer, you have to be looking at it the longer term in order to service and satisfy your customers.
Right, because there's that lifetime value of a customer. So if you're in it as a company to build to last, you want to nurture those long-time customer relationships, because there's that lifetime value, and what's the potential of that customer over the life of that company or the life of that person. And that's something people take into consideration when they're doing a personal service kind of business, but it should be also taken in consideration for normal manufacturing companies. And I also believe we need to get back into that thinking of corporations used to be granted their corporate status on the basis of, are they going to provide a public benefit to the community, to the state? And now we've lost that, and I still think that companies need to have a public benefit to their community and their country, and they should actually have some loyalty to the country that they're in.
Well, I think to your point, Michele, there was that often misquoted incident way back in the 1950s when the guy who had been in charge of General Motors, Charlie Wilson, was being confirmed by a Senate committee to become the Secretary of Defense. He made the statement that people misquote, but it doesn't really matter, where he said what's good for General Motors is good for the country. He actually said what I've always believed is that what was good for the United States was good for General Motors and vice versa. But the point was, your point precisely, Michele, that there was a day that prospering manufacturers meant good things for the U.S. It meant good products. It meant lots of good jobs. It meant economic growth. But I think we really need to, as a society, revisit that and determine is the growth of these multinational companies that take quite a bit from the United States and contribute very little in return. Is that equation still true? How good is it to have these big companies create jobs when none of those jobs are created in this country? The times have certainly changed, and yes, some of our core beliefs need to be revisited.
I agree totally with you. Yes, because right now there's no relationship between Wall Street and Main Street, because too many of the companies that are part of Wall Street are now the multinational corporations that no longer have any loyalty to the United States.
Well,
I'll ask this question, and you both have certainly touched on this pretty strongly, but maybe get comment on you, and this is from a question somebody submitted, any suggestions for accomplishing these things we're talking about within the publicly owned companies, they're typically organized around as cost centers, or with profit. Is there any hope for these companies that they can switch and operate and function as with some of the things we've been talking about?
There certainly is hope, but I think that that strategy and those company core values need to be widely stated and understood up front, so that the investment community knows that that these companies are in it for the long term, and they're not putting their money in and then putting enormous pressure on for that money to increase in value in 90 days, in the next quarterly earning report. But when that expectation is set, and it is with so many companies, that the next quarterly earnings report is the most important thing in the world to them, then it's awfully hard to break out of that mold or that cycle. It's interesting that the companies that do tend to do pretty well, that are publicly traded, are ones like Ford, that came through the recession better than all of the American automakers. But they still have a strong family ownership element that's more driven by long-term values. But I think than, say, General Motors or Chrysler. But I think that when you have leadership that's strong enough to pronounce publicly, especially to the investment community, that this is a long-term deal. Don't expect to get your money out next quarter at a big profit. If that's what you're looking for, go elsewhere, and can stick to those guns, then I think they have a chance. Warren Buffett did that for a long time, although he's starting to backslide a little bit. But getting leadership and ownership of the company to make a very public commitment, I think, is the only way to do it. Once the company's caught in that quarterly trap, it's awfully hard to break out of it.
Yeah.
Right, and I believe there's hope. I wouldn't be spending a lot of my own time, unpaid time writing if I didn't believe there was hope. And that's the key: is we got to keep getting that message out there, have it more people read what we're writing about as far as this philosophy, because it is a whole philosophy. It's a whole way of life that we want people to get back to thinking about. So that's, I'm doing it because I believe that it's what our country needs, and we need to have more of our national leaders get back to believing that it is important to have manufacturing, because we are the foundation of the middle class, and we lose manufacturing and we lose the middle class.
What I would say, I'm with you, Michele. I've been preaching this for 20-some years, and unfortunately, with the publicly traded companies, I can probably count on one hand the number of them where my message has fallen onto fertile ground, but the number of privately held companies is huge, that it resonates with them.
Yes.
I would say to the listeners of the podcast, assuming that most of you are not CEOs of publicly traded companies, that there is nothing more rewarding and more fun and more satisfying than being a part of a truly lean company. And if you're working for a big publicly traded company, I would push for the transformation as hard as you can. But when you come to the conclusion that it isn't going to happen, then bail out and go find a smaller company that truly is lean, and you will find the benefits, the rewards you take from your career just expand exponentially. Only beat your head against that wall for so long, and then go someplace where the message will take root. It's a heck of a lot of fun working for a lean company, and awfully frustrating working for one that can't get past the next quarter.
Good. Hey, I want to narrow in on some of the comments you're making here. Just to let everybody know, I'm going to go over just a little bit because I at least got a couple more questions I want to ask, and this conversation I think is very good and very rich. So you're talking about some of these issues with public companies and some of the advantage with private, medium, smaller companies and all that. So to narrow it in a little bit, what are some of the accounting changes you think could happen to help in corporate decisions that help get companies to move in this direction, and also about where manufacturing should take place? Ideally, Michele, you mentioned earlier about reshoring or bringing things back within the country. So what are some things that accounting can help with that, or lean accounting maybe in particular?
Well, the very first thing is to actually know what your, manufacturing production departments are doing. What are you actually producing per day? Where are your bottlenecks? What's holding you back? Get an accurate, picture of what's actually happening in your company and see whether it's, you're meeting your customers' demand. I mean, that's the first step, is going through the whole steps of doing what, the lean accounting people call your box score of your day, daily performance, hourly performance on each, in each manufacturing sector, each machine even. So that's the first step that I would say. That's the key.
Yeah, I would think, I mean, if you're looking for something very quick to do, to have an impact on your company, get the management people around the table and get your chart of accounts or a budget statement or just something that lists all the different things you spend money on. Get that out and go around the room and identify what adds value for customers and what doesn't. And that doesn't mean what you think is necessary. That means what do customers really, what are they really willing to pay for? And you'll find that customers could care less about your accounting and IT and admin and your CEOs and your marketing and your advertising and a whole lot of your packaging and a lot of other things that you're spending an awful lot of money on that isn't making the product the customers get one iota more valuable. But separating your financial understanding, get away from stuff like direct and indirect and overhead and all of the other goofy classifications, and start talking about your financial reports in terms of value adding and non-value adding. That often has a real eye-opening impact and starts some very interesting conversations. The next thing that I would do, it takes a little bit longer, but get rid of all of the departmental stuff and start adding up all of your costs and revenues by value stream, constructing your value streams around the customers and the channels that you're selling to, and look at your cost end to end and what's the total cost cutting across all of the functions to deliver value to customers. And then you combine those two concepts. You start looking at value streams, cost, what it takes to go from beginning to end to satisfy a customer, and how much money are you wasting along the way. Then you're really starting to get into an interesting look at your company that traditional accounting won't give you. And then, of course, lean targets the waste, all the non-value adding expenses. Begin to look at why are we spending money on that stuff and how do we eliminate it, or at least how do we get more volume across the same amount of waste. So there's a lot that could happen, and it's not all that complicated. It's more of a mindset change than it is any grand, complicated system change. Yeah, lean accounting is actually a simplification of accounting. It's not anything fancy.
Right.
And you brought up a good point, Bill. You talk about really understanding your total costs, and I know, Michele, that's certainly a big key behind the reshoring movement that's been going on, is really understanding what your real total costs are.
Yes, that's what I meant about the hidden cost, because people, if they're only counting the price of the parts, and maybe they count the shipping cost, transportation cost, to have a landed cost, they're forgetting the cost of sending somebody over to Asia, the cost of having somebody be available to take the at the 11 p.m. calls from dealing with Asia, the cost of the communication, the cost of the rework of the defective parts, the cost of the lead time, parts coming from China on the slow boat from China, those having more inventory because you have to have a higher safety stock if a shipment gets delayed. So those are all the hidden costs, that people need to take into consideration, because they aren't adding value. They're waste. The actual offshoring of manufacturing is the opposite of lean. You are creating waste instead of eliminating waste. So the two do not go together. I have, a whole chart of all the wastes that are being caused when you offshore. That's exactly the opposite of becoming a lean company.
Good. Well, like I said, we're going over a little bit. I want to ask one more question, and kind of end. This will be the last question. I make it a little bit, I guess, hopefully fun and provocative question for you two, and then we'll wrap up. But what would you suggest the federal government do or not do, and this is a question from somebody submitted, in order to support the growth of domestic manufacturing?
Well, I would say we actually need to develop a national manufacturing strategy. We have none. I've written about this. We've actually had a couple of different congressmen introduce a bill to set up a process to develop a national manufacturing strategy, but it has never passed. It passes the House and fails in the Senate and vice versa. And so that would be the first step, because you have to consider, what can we, if you have a strategy, then everything else can fall underneath it. Do we need to change our corporate tax structure, which I believe we do? Do we need to, what other things do we need to change at the federal government level to support manufacturing and have it be our number one priority is supporting, because our national security depends on it. But if we have no national manufacturing strategy, we're dead in the water.
My my answer to that would be to level the playing field through the excuse me, the whole tariff structure. I believe that American companies can compete just on the basis of labor cost. I think that's kind of a myth, that American companies are so much more productive that they can overcome any labor cost differential. I think what's truly taking place there that doesn't get nearly enough attention is the comparative impact and cost of regulations. And by that I mean, we pass another iteration of the Clean Air Act, which is a good thing, or another iteration of the Clean Water Act, which is a good thing. But all those things add to the cost of manufacturing here, and at the same time, which may well be worthwhile, not taking a position on the environmental benefit or not of those regulations. But when we do that, and at the same time enter into a free trade agreement, so there's a zero tariff on products coming from China, from Korea, from Vietnam, from wherever, that don't have anything remotely like our environmental regulations. And all we've done is raise the cost domestically, encouraged companies to do more manufacturing in places that don't have any environmental controls whatsoever. And all we've done is shove the pollution from this country to the other side of the planet. We haven't really improved the environment at all, and we've cost ourselves an awful lot of jobs. Same is true with worker safety, child labor, lots of protections that we have in this country that are good things because they reflect our social values. But when we pass those, they increase our cost, and then do a free trade agreement with some place that doesn't share those values, and all we're doing is making sure our kids aren't working, but kids somewhere else are. That our factories aren't burning down, but the factories in Bangladesh are, and killing people over there. I think that when we pass those regulations, we need to take a look, and we need to say that we need to pass a tariff then that has whatever cost increase we just created placed on goods coming from countries that don't have those same regulations. So if China doesn't want to play with to the same level of our Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act, that's fine, but we're going to put a tariff on goods coming from China so that the comparative cost we just added to our goods is going to be added on Chinese goods. Bangladesh doesn't want to have fire safety codes and fire regulations. That's their decision. But whatever the cost to American manufacturers to reflect those social values ought to be added to the cost of goods from Bangladesh until they live up to the same standards. It's all just leveling the playing field, saying that we all need to play by the same environmental and worker safety rules, and there ought to be a tariff on anybody who doesn't want to play by U.S. standards. That's, I think, the single most important thing we can do. I don't care about the labor cost differential, but the regulatory burden and the fact that we are tolerating and, in fact, underwriting pollution, child labor, unsafe factories all over the world, I think, is something that not only hurts American manufacturing, but something that we should take a good look at ourselves in the mirror and say, do we really want cheap stuff at Walmart enough to know that we're subsidizing some pretty bad stuff happening in a lot of bad countries?
Well, Bill, I could have a whole podcast just on the topic of trade agreements, so I guess we'll have to keep that for another time because
Yeah.
we're definitely not on a level playing field, and our trade agreements that we have in the past and currently are negotiating are bad for American-only companies and only benefit the multinationals. So I will have to sign off shortly because I have to get someplace.
Sure. Well, yeah, we'll wrap it up here. But thank you both so much. That's great insight, great discussion, and I think it will. I think we'll maybe try to look at scheduling to have you two back to continue on to this conversation. It was great. Two quick things I certainly got out of there. Two good words that hopefully people will take to listen to this and translate into action that I heard in you guys' conversation discussion is sincerity and hope. You know, that organizations are sincere, and we certainly have hope that we can make things tremendously better. So with this, I will hand it back to you, Jacqueline, Bill, and Michele. Thank you so much. And folks, certainly if you with the lean accounting and lean management summit, these are the types of conversations that go on with people throughout. So it's great conversation will continue. Thank you.
All right. Well, Jim, Bill, and Michele, thank you for facilitating our session today. If you're interested in learning more on this subject, Michele will be speaking at the Lean Accounting Summit held in San Antonio this year on August 25th through the 26th. And Bill has been a regular presenter at the Lean Accounting Summit in the past, but he is unable to attend this year, so we'll definitely miss seeing him there. So if you're interested in learning more about the summit, please visit www.laslms.leanfrontiers.com. And we also wanted to offer a special discount code for everyone tuning in today. So to receive a discount off of the Lean Accounting Summit, please use the discount code WEBINAR, which is listed on the screen, for 10% off of the summit price. Again, that's WEBINAR for 10% off the summit price. So to wrap up, I wanted to remind you all that today's webinar is being recorded, so look for an email following our time together for a link to the recording. Feel free to share this throughout your organization. So again, thank you, Jim, Bill, and Michele, and thanks to each of you for participating in today's session. Goodbye.